Turning back here to Ottawa, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked repeatedly about Canada's options to secure the release of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. The two men have been detained in China since December of 2018 and are now charged as of Friday on spying allegations. Trudeau was asked about a suggestion made months ago from former Foreign Affairs Minister John Manley that Canada should strike a deal that would release Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou in exchange for the two Michaels. Here's how the Prime Minister responded to that.
No, we're not considering that. Canada has a strong and independent justice system. We will ensure that it goes through its proper forces, and anyone who's considering weakening our values or weakening the independence of our justice system doesn't understand the importance of standing strong on our principles and our values.
Why the irritation, and if a deal is absolutely off the table, what can Canada do to get the two Canadians home? Time for the Power Panel to weigh in. In Toronto, Melissa Lantsman, National Vice President of Enterprise Canada, coming to us from Toronto as well via Skype. Council Public Affairs, Brad Levine, and Yolande James, former Quebec Liberal Cabinet Minister, joins us from Montreal. Hi, guys. Great to see you.
Hey,
Melissa, why don't I start with you? There were a ton of questions, of course, on what happened in China. I should say, and I should outline very clearly that China over this morning said what the Prime Minister had said on Friday about it being an arbitrary detention was irresponsible. So the Prime Minister got a lot of questions today. What do you think of, I guess, the answers that he provided?
I think saying that he was disappointed about it was probably more irresponsible to all the Canadians that are looking to him to say more. Look, I think this is actually the most forceful the Prime Minister has been on China, and I think there's a lot of relief from many Canadians abroad that now don't have the target on their back to be part of some sort of political chess game. But I think it's come very sort of late in the game. We're now into the 560-day mark or somewhere around there where the two Michaels have been detained. And cornerstone, I think, of this government has been a delusion about their relationship with China, about not standing up to China, the human rights abuses, about treating China like a friend. So I think we saw a forceful response from the Prime Minister, but I think it's 560 days too late for the Michaels.
Yolande, he did say today, he used the term that stuck out to me, that China was punishing these two Canadians. And Melissa's right, they've been there, as of Friday, it was 557 days. I know that to be sure. But my colleague, Adrienne Arsenault, also has an interview with Michael Kovrig's wife that's coming up tonight on The National. We played a portion of it in which the portion of that we played, in which she says, a harder line on China might not actually get what we want. And of course, that speaks to the crux of the debate being had in this country right now, right? Like, the Prime Minister is criticized for just saying disappointed, for not taking a harder line. At the same time, the government continues to contend that doing so wouldn't exactly get the country where it needs to be with China, and specifically these two individuals. What do you think about that?
Well, when I take everything that you just said, I think that just demonstrates how complex this issue is. And if there was an easy answer to that question, I think the government would have pulled that lever many days ago. I think there is not only a willingness, a commitment to want to get the two Canadians back home. But I'll be eager to see Adrienne Arsenault's interview. But I mean, when you look at what the options are, one, is there truly an expectation for there, as John Manley suggests, that the Minister of Justice or the government will intervene at this time in a process that's not yet the extradition process that's not yet at its end? I don't think that that's a viable option. Two, if the government were to decide to do that, are we going to not consider what the Americans would have to say about that? That's just another obstacle in this very difficult situation. That being said, obviously it's been a long time and it's very frustrating, but the course of action that the government's taking at this point, I think, is the smart one. That is to be able to pursue these diplomatic exchanges behind the scenes, as much as that's frustrating for us from a public point of view that want to be able to have answers to this, but answers as to if this kind of strategy is effective or not. But when you look at all the options on the table, I don't see any other. And when I hear whether it's conservatives or others talk about saying, well, we need to have a harder line, what exactly does that mean other than words? Are we implying that we're ready to put sanctions on China here? What is that going to mean for the country if we were to decide to do that? I just lay that out there, just only to say that there's no easy answer here.
Brad, what do you think?
Well, I think that Justin Trudeau, had to double down on the rule of law, and I think that what we saw from the reaction from earlier today, he had no other option. To begin the process, as Mr. Manley suggested many months ago, to wheel and deal to get the two Michaels out and forego the CFO of Huawei, Meng, and the extradition treaty process would not just end one problem, but it would create a whole host of others. Plus, it would put Canada in a terrible light that, if we either believe in the rule of law and we double down when it gets uncomfortable, which Trudeau was outlining today, or we're hypocrites, and we open ourselves to years and decades of putting Canadians in vulnerable situations, because Canada now has a precedent whereby if other countries, less savory, less democratic, and less rule of law countries want to extract something from Canada, then they can mere kidnap them. That would be the wrong signal to send. So he didn't have much option other than to double down on what was right and proper. Where the conversation goes from now, I mean, it'll be fascinating, because I think Canadians are about to get a civics lesson in Chinese law. That is, these charges of espionage that were announced on Friday, the inability for our citizens, the two Michaels, to get consular services, the conditions. Meng is in one of her mansions in Vancouver, while our two citizens are in less than acceptable conditions from the reports that we're seeing. This is only going to get more interesting as time goes on. My heart still goes out to the families, and Adrian Arsenault's piece tonight will be, I know it was teased earlier on CBC Radio as well as this show, but our hearts have to be with them, but we are going to have to come together to say that lives are not worth trading when the rule of law and other more unsavory practices are at play because of China. And this, all the backdrop of all this, of course, is has Canada looks to come up with policies regarding the Huawei's involvement in our 5G.
Yeah, looks to and has not made a decision after considering it for a long time. And I should quickly note, before I give you the last word in this segment, Melissa, that statistics show that once you're charged, there's a 99% chance that you're convicted. So these two men are facing, just unimaginable circumstances right now.
Yeah.
Melissa?
And that shouldn't be shocking if you understood that there is no rule of law, there is no respect for human rights in China. There is plenty that the Prime Minister can use as levers. It could be sanctions. It could be the removal of work visas. It could be the removal of sort of the fancy arrest conditions of Miss Meng. But instead, he chooses to tell Canadians that he's doing everything he can behind the scenes. And eventually, 560 days later, I'm not sure that Canadians buy it.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.